Hello and welcome to the second of our first webinars of term 2 about all pupils and every ambition campaign. This term we're focusing on preparing all pupils for the world of work and life after school. We want to provide governors with information that will ensure all students, irrespective of their background, are provided with opportunities to meet their potential. So to do that, we've split today's webinars into two shorter ones. This session will focus on careers-related learning in secondary schools. We have just held our first session on primary schools just half an hour ago. So to talk to us about this topic, we have welcomed Rachel Green, who is the Education Engagement and Development Manager for the Careers and Education Company. The Careers and Education Enterprise Company, their aim is to help every young person find their best next step. So Rachel's going to talk to us about what you can do to support your schools, what you should be looking for, and she's also going to provide some questions that you might like to ask. She'll speak for around 20 minutes, and then there'll be an opportunity to put any questions that you have to Rachel. So please do put them into the Q&A chat during the session, and then I'll pose those questions to her. So over to you, Rachel.
Thanks ever so much, Hannah. I'm not able to share my screen at the moment, so I'll start without that, but if someone's able to enable that, that would be great. So, I mean, from our perspective, the biggest challenge that we're facing at the moment is that the world of work that our young people are growing up in is extremely complex. It's changing all the time, and every young person's experience and opportunity is different. Social mobility, disadvantage, locality all mean that the difficulties are not evenly spread. And we're working at the Careers and Enterprise Company to make sure that high quality 21st century careers education is a reality for everyone, everywhere. So that's one of our key visions, and hopefully you can see that on our screen now. We do this predominantly through supporting careers leaders to develop and deliver really meaningful careers education. But they can't do this on their own, and that's why the support of governors is so crucial. So what do you need to know as governors? What does good look like? And what kinds of questions could you be asking? Well, I'm going to start by asking a question of you. And if you wouldn't mind using the chat function rather than the Q&A function, I'd really appreciate, from your experience, if you could put in one word to describe what you feel young people need in order to be work ready. So just one single word in that chat function. What do you think people should be able to know and be able to do? Social skills, attitude, confidences, communication skills, role models, flexibility, the right mindset, aptitude, options, opportunities. Some great words coming in here. Thanks, everybody. Keep them coming, keep them coming. Entrepreneurism, great. Whilst good spelling too. I'm terrible at doing things like that under pressure. Personal guidance, great. Thanks, Amy. There's some really good things coming through here. So thank you for that. I think what is clear from the things that you're putting in there is that it's more than just qualifications. It's more than technical skills and knowledge. To be work ready, we need to have essential skills. We need to be a broad, rounded young person. And that's essentially what careers education is in its broadest sense. That's what personal development is, to use Ofsted speak. So good quality careers programme is more than just the imparting of information. It's about the experiential learning that they have. It's that ability to develop and to practice skills, both in and beyond the curriculum. And it's really what's being reported as being the most useful thing that students are saying is about that skills-based approach and that ability to practice and recognise and develop those skills through the curriculum. So the words that you put into the chat here could already form the basis of some of the questions you could be asking in your institutions. So things like, how are we supporting students to develop entrepreneurism, for example? Employers have stated that historically, young people just haven't been prepared for the world of work properly in terms of their skills and their aptitudes. And without learning from employers, without gaining that experiential learning in the workplace, this is highly unlikely to improve. Many young people feel that their careers education has historically only prepared them for their next step. So it's getting them set up for college or for university, rather than really preparing them for a future life in work. Yet a good curriculum is constantly supporting students to develop those key essential skills or employability skills, or it should be. So there are so many factors to consider when preparing a young person for the world of work. For a start, the labour market is constantly changing. The picture from one locality to another is different, and yet there are some clear growth sectors regionally and nationally. And it's important that students are aware of this changing market and the identified skills gaps, again, locally and nationally. Careers pathways are no longer that sort of linear journey of my generation or my parents' generation. It's no longer a job for life, but I've heard people refer to it as a life of jobs. How can we prepare young people to develop and recognise their transferable skills? We need to be helping students to see the links between the subjects they enjoy and potential opportunity in the future. We need them to see the value in the subjects that they don't enjoy. What are we offering beyond the academic to develop them as individuals, to help and ensure that all students are able to access and benefit from the opportunities that might come their way? We need to be helping them to plan for the unplanned, if you like, particularly for those students who maybe don't have those all-important networks to create and take opportunities. And how do we involve the biggest influences, parents, on this journey as well? So what does good look like? Well, the world-class standard is the Gatsby benchmarks, and that's still something that schools and colleges are working towards, and I'm sure you're aware of. It's an essential part of education, the importance of understanding the relevance of curriculum learning and therefore impacting on engagement and motivation levels. But it's the real world learning and the development of skills that really brings careers education to life and has the greatest impact on young people. So it shouldn't be standalone. It shouldn't be delivered in isolation. It should be an integral part of everything that's happening. And by aligning careers education to the vision of your school or college, and you can really use careers as a vehicle to support those strategic priorities. And that can be incredibly impactful, leading to students feeling much more confident about what's happening. Unfortunately, COVID has and continues to have an enormous impact on the ability to deliver this experiential approach for several reasons. And that lack of opportunity to gain experience of the workplace, combined with that need to cover more in the core curriculum at the moment, has meant that young people feel even less prepared or confident for the world of work or to make informed choices. So that makes it even more crucial that we get it right. So what does good look like in more detail? Well, careers education should be embedded in the curriculum, not a standalone. At a time when we're facing significant challenge due to the pandemic, the time for careers is most likely under pressure. And so it's really helpful to think about how we can embed it into the curriculum as part of everyday delivery. And the curriculum modelling tool highlights different approaches to implementing careers learning that doesn't require the curriculum to be adapted. It doesn't need it to detract from curriculum learning outcomes. And this tool's been created based on examples of good practice from across the network in England, from the Learning from Careers hubs, and really helps to build on colleagues' innovation in response to the pandemic. So it's got loads of information to support the embedding of careers into the curriculum and is available for you to have a look at or to point your careers leaders in the direction of. And the link is at the bottom here on the slide. You'll see that on all the slides linking through to things that might be of use to you. So thinking about the sorts of questions that you could be asking around whether careers is embedded in your school or college is around whether there's a clear strategy on that provision and how that is communicated beyond just the careers team or the careers leader, because they can't do this on their own. We need to make sure that heads of department are engaged with it. What evidence is there that that's happening? If you're on a walk around school or college, if you're looking at planning, if you're talking about this in a curriculum committee, what can you see that shows that heads of department, heads of faculty are really engaged with this? And how are curriculum teachers specifically being helped and supported to promote that full range of progression routes from their subject? How are they being kept up to date with the ever-changing routes from their subject? Careers education should be progressive. It should be building on previous learning, just like any other aspect of the curriculum. It should move from that broad starting point through into more focused as the young people progress through your institution. So that it's really important that you're clearly defining for each student what you want them to know, understand, and be able to do at key decision points in their journey. As part of a skills-based curriculum or progressive careers programme, a good place to start would be to think about what you want young people to know, understand, and be able to do at each stage of their education. And this learning journey that you can see on this slide really helps career leaders with key partners such as yourselves, senior leaders, curriculum staff, employers, to really plot out what that learning could look like over the course of their journey. And it really is a good way to share that with broader members of the school or college. It could be something that's developed in each individual department, showing how they're contributing towards this journey with the shared goals and shared skills development. It might be worth considering what's already happening, if that hasn't been done, and seeing how that could be supported or improved with employer engagement or an increased focus on skills-based learning. So each year should be building on the previous year and incorporating those real-world opportunities to practice and embed skills. And again, you can link to these templates from this slide. So some questions. Is the careers provision sequential? Is it meeting the changing needs of students as they progress through school or college? And how do we know that it's meeting the changing needs as they go through? Careers education should involve parents, and parents and guardians really are a significant influence on their child's career decision-making choices. In fact, they're arguably the biggest influences for young people. It's important for senior leaders, careers leaders, and governors to really identify opportunities to enhance parental engagement generally, but also through that lens of careers to really think about how we can be best supporting students through transition and progression, and how we can be supporting some parents to have those conversations with their child, but also to be able to do that beyond their own lived experience, which can be quite limiting or out of date. Now, the Careers and Enterprise Company are working with the Gatsby Foundation on a project called Talking Futures, all around parental engagement. And there are a large number of resources linked to from the slide. And over the next couple of years, this will continue to grow and develop as we undertake more research and resource development. But a really good quality careers programme will support parents to understand what the current careers landscape looks like and what the full range of options are open to their child. But it challenges some of those stereotypes or misconceptions that parents may have about particular sectors, such as apprenticeships or technical pathways, and helps them to see the parity between a technical route and then a more academic traditional route. So some of the questions that might be worth considering are how are we actually ensuring that parents are being kept informed and engaged per se, but again, more specifically around the careers agenda? How are we helping them to really help support their young person with their decision making? Do we regularly collect feedback from students, parents, staff, employers? How are we acting upon that feedback? And is that what we're offering actually meeting the need of parents and young people, and how do we know that? Careers education should also, when it's at its best, involve employer engagement rather, and links with providers of further and higher education, including those technical pathways. Bringing in those visitors from outside will really help to bring that to life. And it's actually a statutory part of what we should be doing in a secondary school, meeting the Baker Clause. Every student should have multiple opportunities to learn from employers about work, about employment, and the skills that are valued in the workplace. And this could be through a multiple range of activities, speakers, mentoring, enterprise schemes, things like that. Every year from the age of 11, students should have at least one meaningful encounter with an employer. And a meaningful encounter is one where a student has a real opportunity to learn about what work is like, or what it takes to be successful in the workplace. It should be a really active experience, not a passive one, with the chance to properly engage with employers, ask questions, learn from them as much as possible. And there's a lot of information available on our resource directory supporting you in how to do that and how to make that meaningful. So what evidence is there that students engage meaningfully with further and higher education, apprenticeship providers, technical and vocational pathways? It's really, really important that this is happening, as this is reported on directly in an Ofsted report, as well as just making sure that your students are equipped with all the information that they need. You could be asking whether they are actually visiting workplaces, to what extent employers are involved in lessons, and whether this is embedded, and if it's actually meeting need. And then again, about further and higher education, that need to be making sure that young people are exposed to all possible pathways. I've used this word meaningful before. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that every activity, every opportunity, encounter with an employee or an experience of the workplace needs to be impactful. It should be informing students, raising aspirations, broadening horizons, and ultimately equipping them with what they need to make an informed choice about their next step. There is a Making It Meaningful checklist that helps schools and colleges really think about careers education as a cycle, constantly reviewing provision. And this toolkit helps with that process. And it could be something that in your role as governor, you could support a careers leader with that constant review of provision, making sure it's meeting the need of your students. So the sorts of questions we could be asking here is, how do we know that it's meaningful? Is everybody having these opportunities to meet with employers every year? And exploring what the careers leader or senior leader in your setting really understands by the word meaningful. Careers education should be right for your learners. This means that, the learners in one of your schools are not the same as in another. The needs are different. There are so many factors that need to be considered. Local and national labour market information, the demographics of your setting, identified needs of a particular year group, and so on. And good careers provision really does need to be very clear in its intent and have that demonstrable impact each time that you deliver something. Is it delivering? Is the careers programme really delivering what's right for the current cohort? At a recent conference that I attended on Ofsted, the lead inspector there stated that the best way to prepare for an Ofsted inspection was not to prepare for an Ofsted inspection, but instead to just continue delivering every day, week in, week out, what's right for your students. And Ofsted will just come along and validate that. So I think it's a really important thing for you to consider. Does the senior leadership team, does the governing body, does the careers leader truly know what learners in your setting need, particularly in terms of personal development? And has the offer been shaped to reflect that need? So there's some questions here that you could be asking to help think about that. Is the careers programme meeting the needs of our students, and how do we know that? What evidence have we got? Are we using labour market information to inform decision making and to promote progression into particular areas? And do we know the specific needs of the new cohort that are joining us in September? Will we need to adapt the provision to take account of their particular needs? And if you're particularly interested in this, there's a link to a webinar here specifically looking at the importance of transition from, in terms of skills development and parental engagement from primary into secondary. So if you'd like to, please do link through to that and join us for that free event in March. Careers education should be making a difference. Obvious but true. What you need to be able to do is to demonstrate that it's making a difference. How do you know that what you're offering is making a difference and is meeting the needs of young people? What's the data telling you? Are you using things like destinations data, for example, to identify trends and patterns in where your leavers are going to, what they're studying, how many are not in employment, education or training when they leave you? And hopefully the impact of your programme will be to reduce the number of NEETs to demonstrate the range of pathways and choices that your students are making, and the fact that they're making sustained choices. Now, there's a really great new toolkit here, the Impact Evaluation Toolkit, which will really help you in schools and colleges to evaluate the impact of the careers programme. And it's aimed at careers leaders, but they would really appreciate the support of governors and senior leaders, thinking about how they approach evaluation, different types of impact evidence, how to use this insight to identify successes and challenges, and engage colleagues more broadly to improve quality as part of that cycle of planning, delivery, and reflection that we talked about earlier. Now, the vast majority of schools and colleges are now using Compass Plus or Compass to evaluate their careers programme. And this process really helps to identify gaps and progress in terms of the careers provision, which is valuable for engaging your colleagues and making improvements to make sure that every young person is prepared to make their best next step. So this is a really great resource, and again, linked through to from the slide. As far as questions go on this one, is there a plan in place to collect, analyse and improve destinations data, including thinking about sustained destinations? And how is this data being used to adapt future provision? Are there any trends that make you think you might need to adapt what you're delivering to meet a need? And have you considered how careers education could be used to support disengaged students, those who are at risk of becoming NEET a little bit more? Maybe we should, by identifying them earlier and putting in more support for them at an earlier point. So questions for you to consider as a governor. Do you feel that the governing body really currently has a strategic oversight of careers? And if not, what could be done to help you to have that? Do you have a careers linked governor or someone who takes a strategic responsibility for careers, which could be really useful, as it means that one person has got a really in-depth understanding of the careers provision and the challenges that they're facing, and are able to really bring that to the wider governing board? Is the governing body fully aware of the careers programme that's offered and how it's being delivered, how it's being evaluated? And is this discussed at governing body meetings or in subcommittee meetings? Is a written record of these discussions being kept? Ofsted are very interested to see that that is happening. Does the careers leader report to the head teacher or give a report in full governing body meetings on the progress towards those broader strategic aims and the careers programme? And do you have a good understanding as a governor of how the school is performing in relation to the Gatsby benchmarks? And how does that compare to what's happening locally and nationally? How well is your school or college doing against those self-assessment criteria? Are you aware of how the curriculum promotes progression into further education or training, apprenticeships, employment? And how involved are you as a governor in careers events at school or college? So a few more general questions here that you could ask. Where does careers education fit in a school or college development or improvement plan or quality improvement plan? How do we know that the careers support that's offered is progressive and effective? Is there a robust action plan already in place to address any areas of weakness against the Gatsby benchmarks? What are those areas of weakness? There's also a link from this slide to a document designed to help governors explore the role of the board in providing an effective careers programme. So do please explore that at your leisure as well, which hopefully will be useful to you. So I'm going to stop talking now and see if we've got any key questions. I'll stop sharing my screen so that I can see people a little bit more.
Thanks ever so much, Rachel. Really, really interesting. Just so everyone knows, we will be sharing the slides with all of the links via email afterwards, because I know people, a couple of messages in the chat that that people are keen to get their hands on that. So lots of useful information. To start us off, I had a question around policies. What sort of policies should be in place around careers-related learning and careers education in secondary schools?
Well, the first thing I'll do is say there's some really useful information on policies and documents on our resource directory, but also the Careers Development Institute have some good information on that. There should be a careers policy, and some people have that sitting within other policies. It's all very, very different depending on how it works where you are. But there should clearly be a careers policy. There should be, ideally, a strategic plan around careers, a long-term thinking around where you want it to go, what it's going to look like for the next few years. But just like any other curriculum area, there should be a policy in place. But there is guidance of the sort of things that you might want to consider in there on our resource directory.
Lovely, thank you. We have now had a couple of questions come in as well. Are governors able to access Compass data for our schools? So you mentioned Compass there. Can governors access it directly, do you think?
So they won't necessarily have a sign up to look at it directly, but it should be something that is shared with you regardless. So yes, you should be, in an ideal world, getting a report on a regular basis, at least annually, from your careers leader about where you are in terms of your self-assessment. Your senior leaders should have a full breakdown of how you are self-assessing against those Gatsby benchmarks. So yes, if you haven't seen that, I would be asking to see that. And that's something that you really do need to be aware of. So yes, please do ask if you haven't.
Lovely, thank you. And a question around the leading indicators of effectiveness. What are the 3 or 4 leading indicators of effectiveness?
There's a good question.
That is,
I would definitely signpost you towards that impact evaluation toolkit as a good way of collecting that information as to what's making a difference. I've forgotten the phrasing of your question, Hannah.
So 3 or 4 leading indicators of effectiveness.
Effectiveness. Okay. If you are working in an effective way, you will be seeing in your destinations data a reduction in the number of young people who are leaving your institution, not in employment, education or training. You'll be seeing that people are making the right choices when they leave you, that they are in sustained destinations, that they're going on to having successful careers, and hopefully you'll have alumni coming back and telling your students all about the wonderful journeys that you've been on. You should be seeing in feedback from students, from parents, that they're feeling confident, that they know the choices that they're going to be making next, that they have a future pathway, not necessarily mapped out. You know, I know I want to be here and this is how I'm going to get there, but they know where to go to find that information. I would be encouraging you as governors to be talking to young people when you're going around school and colleges and asking those sorts of questions. You know, how confident do you feel about where you're going next? Who would you go and speak to? I can share with you afterwards, Hannah, the sorts of questions that Ofsted ask young people. And those are the sorts of questions that I would be encouraging you as a governor to see what your young people are saying, but also what your staff are saying. Are they aware? Are they understanding of what's going on? Because if it's fully embedded, you're going to be effective.
Thank you. We've got a question around the current curriculum, specifically around computing and technology, but I'm sure it probably does cross over a little bit. I guess the concern around the curriculum needing to be so in line with what is needed is, what influence can we have as governors in that area? I'm
not sure whether you're asking whether where careers fits within the curriculum, or how to make.
Yeah, I guess so. The question is, how do we influence the current curriculum on computing and technology? For example, updating it with binary encoding for computing and that sort of side of things. But I think how we can link it with careers specifically is a bit would feel unfair to put you on the spot about curriculum, but yeah.
I think each subject area, regardless of where it is, the best way to keep it up to date and the best way to keep it relevant and to keep students engaged with it is to involve employers, involve people who are using this on a day-to-day basis. So the more you can bring in support from employers locally, the better it will be, because young people will see, oh, I'm not just learning this because Miss says I have to. I'm learning this because actually it's absolutely relevant to my future. And I need to understand this skill, or I need to understand that problem solving is the best way I can equip myself to prove that I can do this job, because part of this is I can learn some of this coding, I can learn some of this later. What I need to have is the right attitude, and I need to develop that problem solving approach to things, and that will stand me in good stead for the future. So I would talk about employer engagement and involving people in the curriculum delivery. They can support teachers in some of that curriculum delivery too, particularly if you've got project-based learning opportunities.
Lovely. One last question, because it is 2 o'clock. Does the Careers and Enterprise Company deliver something like this to head teachers and SLT? How do we share the message, I guess, with our schools?
Yeah, so at the moment, our main focus is working with people like yourselves at governor level. Yes, we do deliver support for head teachers and education leaders and principals. We have some online training modules that are already available, and we will happily talk to large groups of education leaders. If you've got a hub in your area, I would definitely go through the hub who could deliver something like this. We're very happy to engage at head teacher conferences, principal conferences and things. So please do get in touch with us if we can help with anything. And we're developing more and more to engage education leaders as we go. So yes.
Thank you ever so much, Rachel. Really, really interesting. I hope everybody enjoyed the session. We have a couple more coming up over the term around careers specifically, so hopefully you'll be able to join us for those as well. Thanks again, Rachel, and I hope everybody has a lovely afternoon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.